glad we here. I heard that many of you wanted to get to know me just a little bit better. That implies, of course, that you know something about me to start with. You think you do, but you don't. For 2,000 years, you have been mispronouncing my name. And I only get out 2 lines in your scripture. No, you don't know me at all. You call me Jesus Barabbas. Barabbas is not my name. In Hebrew, my name is Yeshua, Jesus. Bar Abbas, 2 words. Bar Abbas means son of the Father. My name is Yeshua, son of the Father, the same as that itinerant preacher up in Galilee. Quite a coincidence, don't you think? He was a rebel in his own way, Yeshua Barabbas, and I, in my own way, am a rebel in Jerusalem, Yeshua Bar Abbas. So you said you wanted to get to know me. Well, let's get into it. Oh, I see you in the back. You know what I did for my whole life? What was that? You're right. I was a zealot. Now, I don't know if you know what a zealot is, but it was a political party of people who were pro-Israel and hated the Romans. We were freedom fighters. And as a zealot, I'll have to claim this, I was brilliant at logistics. I could create all kinds of insurrections at a whim. I had people immediately following me to kill. We took out as many Roman soldiers as we could, but there was another group of people that we truly hated, and they were some of our own. They were Jews who were in league with Rome, usually the wealthy. They had a pretty sweet deal with the Romans. They would get a cut of taxes and various things, and the rest of us, what did we get? More taxes piled on, and when we couldn't pay them, the normal person would lose some of their crops, some of their livestock, and in extreme cases, their children were taken and sold into slavery. We hated the Roman regime. But I hated even worse were my fellow citizens who were betraying each other. And so my favorite part of being a zealot was to be something called Sicarii. Sicarii meant assassin. And this was the tool of my trade. It's beauty, isn't it? Do you notice the curve in the blade? And so sharp, this could cut through a sheep's skin in an instant. You would stab, lift up, pull out. It was genius. So what did we Sicarii do? Well, we didn't attack people in obvious ways. We'd get ourselves caught, wouldn't we? So we would go to the marketplace in Jerusalem. Now, if you've ever been there, you know how crowded it is. And what do people do? They try to bargain with the merchants to get the best price. And so we would walk around, our heads covered, our daggers in our belts, listening to what people said. And if anyone said any word that was positive about Rome, that was our target. We would each choose our targets and follow them until they began bartering or trying to get the best price they could for seeds or tools or fabrics. Once they were in that mode of getting the best price, they didn't pay any attention to who was behind them, who was beside them. It was all about the bargain. And other people would join in trying to get a better price than the person trying to buy. They paid no attention to us. And that was when we struck. In, up, out. It was back under our cloaks, and we were lost in the crowd before the body fell to the ground. We were terrorizing these Jews who were being traitors to Israel. Yes, that's what I did for a living, and I have to tell you, I don't regret a bit of it. In some sick way, I loved it. And then things got a little confusing. I had someone approach me one day and say, I hear you were up in Galilee speaking to people. And I said, no, I wasn't. But they said, no, it was Yeshua Barabbas. I know it was your name. And I began hearing more and more about this. And then I realized it was a country rabbi, same name. But he seemed to be getting a lot of notoriety. So I thought, I have to go up and see this man, see what this is all about. And so I did. I went up there on a day. I caught him on a day when he was talking to several thousand people. And he talked a lot about a new kingdom and a new regime, yet he was talking very publicly about this. And I thought, the man's not too bright. He's going to get killed. The more he talked about that. And then he did this, I guess he was a magician too, because somehow he managed to provide bread and fish for all of us. Still haven't figured that one out. I couldn't get near him, but I went back to Jerusalem to try to figure out what to do. I will give the man credit. Spellbinding preacher. He could manipulate any group to do anything, and I thought, I'm not a man of words, I'm a man of action. He's not a man of action, but he is a man of words. If you combine the two, we're unstoppable. We actually have a chance to get the Romans out. I sent a few zealots to talk with him, and he would have no part of it. So I thought, I have to come up with a different way to persuade him to be with us. And so I chose a zealot named Simon. Now, Simon the zealot was one of my best lieutenants. He was also a temple priest. Now, from what I understand of this Yeshua Bar Abbas, we now called him the Nazarene so we wouldn't confuse ourselves. The Nazarene was a faithful Jew. He was observant. And so I thought, if I send this temple priest down, he will bring the authority of his priesthood that an observant Jew would respect, and maybe he'll come over to our side. So Simon went off. He came back about 10 days later. He had this beautiful smile on his face. And I said, Simon, does that smile mean what I think it does? Has a decision been made? And he said, oh yes, a decision has been made. And I said, you mean the Nazarene is going to join us? And he said, no, that wasn't the decision. The decision that was made was my decision. You see, I've decided to follow him. And he handed me back his dagger. I was stunned. If I hadn't been so stunned, I probably would have killed him myself. And then I said, well, Simon, don't you at least want your dagger? And he said, no. The Nazarene says, put your swords away. Well, now I knew he was one candle short of a menorah. You just can't do that. You can't talk about a new regime and have no weapons. Words don't win wars. Weapons do. I was convinced the man was crazy, but brilliant at the same time. So at any rate, I lost Simon and a few others, and then I went about my business. Now I knew from the beginning that sooner or later I would have a date with the cross. And that date came sooner than I expected. I just got careless one day, and I was caught. I was thrown into a stinking cell filled with rodents, and I knew very soon my date with the cross would come. I won't say I wasn't scared, I was. But yet, even with that fear, I didn't regret a thing. I would do it all again. Passover was coming, and I knew my time was short. I was in my cell. My cell was located underneath the stone pavement. That was kind of the patio where Pilate would make his decisions, where he would call people to accountability and condemn people to death. And I heard a lot of action up there, a lot of movements, a lot of voices, but I couldn't quite hear what they were saying. Before long, I heard my name, Barabbas, Barabbas. And then the words, crucify him, crucify him. Of course, I thought they are coming to get me. And these must be the pro-Roman people who are there calling for my death. In a very short time, a centurion and 2 guards opened my cell door, slammed it back, and the centurion said, "Get out." Okay, I stepped over the threshold, and he said, "No, I mean really, get out." And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, you're free to go. And I said, do you know who you're talking to? And he said, yes, Yeshua Bar Abbas of Jerusalem. Pilate has freed you. And I said, why? I couldn't believe I asked that question. I was so shocked. And he said, Bar Abbas the Nazarene is taking your place on the cross. I was flabbergasted. I was brought to tears. I couldn't believe it. And I started to argue with him, saying, but he's innocent. I'm not. And then he said, the centurion said, yes, you're right. He is innocent. He healed my servant. That's an innocent man. He's taking your place. Now go before I crucify you myself. So I ran as far and as fast as I could, and I was trying to come up with a plan, trying to make sense of this. And I went to where we kept our stash of weapons, and I got my dagger. And I'd formulated a plan. I thought, I am going to go to that road where people are lining up to watch this circus of crucifixions, and I'm going to kill everyone I can in the name of Jesus who's in sympathy with Rome. I had murder in my heart, on my lips, and in my mind. And so I covered my head so as not to be recognized. And as I stood, I saw two men pull their crosses behind them. They were petty thieves. I knew them, and I felt bad for them, but I really felt bad for Yeshua. He'd done nothing. And as I looked down the road, I noticed the crowd got really silent. And all that could be heard was the weeping of a few women across the road. And as I craned my neck to look, here came this man, this wretch of a man. He'd been so badly beaten he couldn't stand up straight. I don't know if you know about Roman whippings, but they put a metal ball at the end of the thongs with a hook in it. Mm-hmm. And so when you're whipped, your flesh tears. Mm-hmm. This man was bleeding profusely, barely walking down the road with this obscenity of thorns on his head. He had so many thorns and so much blood, he couldn't even see where he was going. And one of the weeping women came out and wiped the blood off of his face. And do you know what he did? He went and comforted them. I mean, who does that? I was flabbergasted. And though he'd never met me, he looked across the road at me, and our eyes locked. And I knew in an instant, he knew everything about me. It was like I was held in eternity. And then very gently, he shook his head no. He knew what I was planning to do. He didn't want death in his name. I was stunned and rooted to the spot. And by the time I became aware of my surroundings again, I was alone. The crowd had followed them up to the place of the skull, to the crucifixion. And I looked at my knife and thought, I have to kill in that name. But I couldn't. Nothing was working right. Maybe I'm the one with one candle short on my menorah. And I realized I just couldn't do it anymore.